Good morning, everyone. We're very glad for you to be joining us today. I'm Katie Easterly Marte, the Executive Director of the Community Development Finance Authority. And today we're going to be presenting to you information about the Community Navigator Pilot Program. I'm joined by my colleagues, Molly Donovan, the Director of Economic Development, who led the Community Navigator Program, and Melissa Latham, our Director of Communications. The Community Development Finance Authority is a statewide community and economic development entity serving all of New Hampshire. We're a state-chartered independent nonprofit organization, much like other authorities like New Hampshire Housing and the Business of Finance Authority. I'll give you a little more information about CDFA, and then we'll jump right into the learnings in the Community Navigator Program. Our mission is to maximize the value and impact of community development, economic development, and clean energy initiatives throughout New Hampshire. We see New Hampshire with communities that are economically and socially resilient, reflect and respect their natural surrounding, and are places where people want to live, work, and play. You can see how the goals of the Community Navigator Program to support small businesses really align to CDFA's vision and our values, which are accountability, collaboration, adaptability, respect, focus, and equity. Today, we're pleased to share and to celebrate the success of the Community Navigator Program. We will share information on the businesses who were served throughout the program, which was a 2-year pilot ending just in the end of May. We'll talk about the program components, ensure that you understand sort of how the program came together and the uniqueness of that collaborative approach. We'll share the learnings from the program and some learnings from a small business ecosystem assessment that we were able to complete alongside this program. And we'll also tell you about some of our thoughts on the future. So at the end of 2021, CDFA was awarded $2.5 million from the Small Business Administration to support increased access and resources to small businesses in New Hampshire. CDFA worked with many of you as partners in this application, and we were selected as one of 51 awardees from more than 700 submissions nationwide. The SBA selected CDFA because the Community Navigator Program was a unique local collaboration model. It really built on that collaboration that was already in place through CDFA's work with many regional and local economic development entities. They recognized that resources weren't flowing equitably to all communities in New Hampshire and to all small businesses. And underserved areas, including rural regions, faced significant financial hardships during the COVID-19 pandemic. CDFA's Community Navigator Program was a new resource, offering New Hampshire small businesses technical assistance at no charge. The services to small businesses included business counseling, marketing, operations, business planning and strategy development, connection to training and skills and resource development, access to capital, and other support as needed. Between 2021 and 2023, the Navigator Program focused on addressing the challenges faced by socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses, particularly micro businesses, which are businesses with 5 and less employees, which are many of the small businesses in New Hampshire, cooperatives, and early stage ventures. Efforts were directed towards those that are historically underserved. We know those are BIPOC business owners, immigrants, refugees, veterans, women, disabled individuals, and LGBTQ entrepreneurs. The Community Navigator Program used a hub and spoke model. The Navigator Program was powered by an ecosystem of experienced small businesses, community partners, regional economic development corporations, and microenterprise technical assistance providers across the state. You can see that all areas in New Hampshire were covered by this program. You can really see the different geographies and needs of the region that were addressed by the 5 spokes. Community partners in the Community Navigator Program acted as trusted advisors and connectors. They were a new addition to the real ecosystem and support for small businesses in this really resourced way, and they bridged the gap between the program's priority populations and the spokes and other entities who provided support and financing for these small businesses. These partners all played a vital role in outreach, engagement, and program implementation. We learned that community partners have a wide range of organizational capacity, and helping to support and grow this capacity is key to program success and reaching diverse small businesses. We are very proud to work on the statewide level with BAPOC, the Business Alliance for People of Color, Neighborhood Access, the Center for Women in Enterprise, and the Indonesian Community Connect. On the regional level, our regional partners work directly with the Coos County Directors Network, the Family Child Care Network, the Lakes Region Community Developers, the Lower Grafton Council for Young Children and Families, the Monadnock Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Coalition, and the Upper Valley BIPOC Network. These organizations that represent the diverse businesses that we're looking to serve really acted, as I said, as that connector and collaborator throughout this program. I'm sharing a quote from the Business Alliance of People of Color. They acted as a vital connector and trust builder within their communities, and the organization was strengthened by the Community Navigator Program. BAPOC is a new nonprofit. Their mission is to employ resources from local, state, and federal levels to boost diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as promote social, financial, and human capital for the advancement of minority-owned businesses, underserved communities, and the overall well-being of New England. It was very critical to have their expertise and their guidance as we develop these specific services for underrepresented businesses. And with this concentrated effort, the Navigator program was able to serve a diverse population that has historically been underserved. There were 306 businesses served in just this short pilot program. This nearly doubled the number of small or micro businesses that CDFA typically provides funding to support through our microenterprise program. The majority were in priority areas based on our core data index. So the core data index evaluates 13 demographic characteristics for all 234 municipalities, and it identifies those municipalities with the most significant needs. The municipalities where residents are living in which there are significant demographic challenges. So the majority of the businesses that were served are in priority areas, which means they have a score of over 35. The highest possible index number is 70. The lowest, there's actually no communities that have that 70, it's in the low 60s, and the lowest number is 13. So you can see that range. And the majority of the businesses that we were serving and were in communities where there was significant need. And we know that in those communities, there's often less resource. So this was a really key finding for us. And we were very proud to really focus in those areas. Those included by far the most clients in Manchester. This was largely due to the SBDC staff that had local connections and really identified underserved businesses there. Keene, Lancaster, Littleton, Berlin, Laconia, those are just a few of the communities of those priority areas. But we had clients in each county. And as you can see, the clients that were served really did represent those priority populations that we were wanting to focus on and ensure were served through this program. So more than 26% of the clients served identified as BIPOC, 13.8% of the clients served were either Hispanic or Latino, 57% were female, and 6% identified as having a disability. The industries represented in the program highlight the diverse range of businesses that needed these supports. So we have 18% of those that were served were in the retail trade business, accommodations and food services were 17%, and all other services were 13%, comprising of the majority. In the Navigator program, we serve necessity entrepreneurs. These are entrepreneurs who are starting a business to meet their needs. We'll talk a little more about necessity entrepreneurs in just a bit. Types of assistance provided really reflect the needs of the businesses, and this reflects the needs of necessity entrepreneurs. Insights into the type of businesses sought by our participants in the Navigator program shed a light on what types of resources aren't currently traditionally reaching underserved communities and where we can really build that additional assistance. So the largest service was for technical assistance. The second is access to capital, all the grant and loans combined that got to small businesses. And there was more than $2 million of capital provided as a direct result of the Navigator program, plus other capital as well. And assistance in starting a businesses. So that really early stage, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So to talk about those learnings is Molly Donovan. So she's CDFA's Director of Economic Development, and she directed this program when she came on to CDFA about a year ago. And I'm really excited to introduce her and let her talk about some of the things that we learned through the Navigator program. Thanks, Molly. Molly, it's
yes.
there you
thank
are.
you.
Yeah, all set.
There I am.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I apologize. My Wi-Fi went out for a minute, so I apologize. I hope that doesn't happen again. But we will carry on. So thank you, Katie, and thank you to everyone for joining us here today, especially our many partners in this program and our partners that are the spokes that were carrying out the work directly with small businesses. I want to share with you our key program elements and our learnings. So while we learned a great deal from the businesses we served, we also have found that we learned a great deal from the programmatic elements. And we want to share some of those with you today. And so my next few slides, I'm going to talk about what was done in outreach and engagement, relationship building, and trust building. You'll hear me talk about that quite a bit. The importance of representation, access to capital, and capacity building. So a key learning in the Community Navigator program is the importance and the changes that spokes undertook to do outreach and engagement with new businesses and diverse businesses. And so we have many, many examples where our partners on the ground learned to make new connections in new communities through many of our community partners. They also were out in community, whether it was meeting with municipalities, participating in multicultural festivals, going to new events that typically they may not have been to in the past. And so it was really an effort to be out on the ground and meeting new businesses and potential businesses. Many of our spokes report back to us the importance of this relationship building, the importance of meeting someone for the first time at an event, then maybe seeing them in community at another event, and then feeling that small business is building some trust and able to come in for some support. So outreach and engagement has been critical. The next program feature that we have some tremendous learnings from is our community of practice and our office hours. So in this hub and spoke model, we had a regular monthly community of practice of the hub and the staff from the spokes. And in the first year, the effort really focused on understanding the changes in our state and the diversity and the growing diversity in our state so that we could all be ready to serve new businesses. In the second year, we really focused on the practical application of that. And as a group, we were able to bring training and education through this community of practice time together, spent time sharing with one another about what was working, what was challenging, what we were learning, and built a collaborative learning environment. In addition, we had regular office hours with our data collection team, as our spokes did a really nice job collecting data from small businesses, which is a really important piece of this. And so they had the ability to meet with our data staff person on a regular basis to talk about the challenges and the opportunities in data collection. And then finally, we also had office hours with our marketing partner, Lewis Carno Communications. We found that, again, to be a key relationship building piece so that our spokes and the hub had the marketing and the communication resources they needed to reach out to new small businesses. On the data collection front, wanted to share with you how important I think we all know data collection is when we're doing work in community development, and also to acknowledge how hard it can be. This again was an area where we had to do significant work in trust building. Very difficult to be meeting with a new business, a person you may not be familiar with. Maybe they don't speak your language, or it's the first time they're in the office. And so it's really hard to then ask someone to share their personal and financial information so we can collect data. And we learned better methods over time to collect that data. And just to be in full disclosure, the data we're sharing today, I think is really robust, although we did have a significant number of people who were just not ready to share information with us. And so we saw that change over time as our relationships strengthen with new populations. And so we all need to be very mindful of that when we consider data collection in these type of programs. Also, it's really important to be very clear on the purpose and use of the data and to be very transparent about that. As I mentioned, we provided marketing support throughout the program. Here are some examples here. That marketing support was to CDFA as the hub. And so we have a very robust Community Navigator website. We'll be sharing a link with that, or you can certainly look at that while we're here on the webinar, as a place where all our information is housed. We have a significant number of blogs that were done and shared so we could tell the story of what was going on, and even some educational blogs. And I think most importantly, this marketing support was available to each of the spokes. And that allowed the spokes to take a look at their websites and ensure that they were welcoming and inclusive. We were mindful of that folks would need different language access. We've had some reviews to make sure that our website and our materials are accessible to the disabled community. And so that was very important. We also found that marketing materials, it was most helpful to have those in multiple languages. We had translation done on presentations that community partners were doing to specific audiences. And so we just found that this marketing support was a really nice bridge between what we were trying to accomplish in terms of bringing in new under-resourced businesses and what we were able to accomplish. Here's an example of a postcard that we did for Indonesian Community Connect in their own language. This was very important to them to be able to promote the program. And it's part of the learnings that we have around the importance of representation. And so what we've heard from small businesses is it's really important they see things in their own language, that their culture is well represented and understood in the work that we're doing, and that people can relate, feel comfortable, and trust whether it's a spoke or the hub or whoever they're connecting with in their community for resources. We saw particular success with organizations that had staff that they brought on that were bilingual and had long-standing connections in their community, in their diverse community. Absolutely, that was an asset in the Navigator program. As was mentioned earlier, access to capital, of course, is key for any work in the small business ecosystem. And so, and I'll talk a little bit about that going forward in the study that we'll share in a minute on the ecosystem. And where we were able to address this in the Navigator program and address this actually going forward in our programming is the spokes and the hub participated in national training on equitable lending policy and equitable lending practices. And many of our spokes have adopted new policies and new practices around equitable lending. And understanding the needs, the access needs for small businesses. CDFA was able to put in place a new interest rate policy in terms of the financing that we do to meet the needs of small businesses and diverse populations. And currently CDFA, through its microenterprise program, alongside with the spokes, has been doing some direct grants, small grants under $5,000 and under, to small businesses over the last 2 years. And we've seen tremendous success in that small grant program. And as we begin to understand more and more about the needs of necessity entrepreneurs and diverse entrepreneurs, we know that these small grants and access to capital are critically important. So we have many, many small business spotlights that I think too many to share on this webinar today. Here is a really nice view of Berlin and Muddy Boots Maple, which was a client served in the Community Navigator Program through the COAS, Community Development Corporation. If you take a look at the Community Navigator website, where you can access the final report of the Community Navigator Program and the small business ecosystem analysis, both of those have some really nice samples and examples of the businesses that were served. In the final Community Navigator report, you'll find highlight of businesses from around the state. And it tells you about the kind of business and the kind of technical and financial support they receive through the Community Navigator Program. In the ecosystem study, you'll find similar stories, but come from a different point of view. And in the ecosystem study, we took a look at businesses who had yet to access the small business ecosystem to understand the challenges, and a number of those businesses are highlighted in that report. So I encourage you to take a look. Also encourage you and want to acknowledge all the work on behalf of the spokes. This is really their work directly with the small businesses. And so I think they're eager to share with you the stories of who they've worked with and the success that they've seen over the past 2 years. So now I'm going to shift a little bit and talk about the New Hampshire Small Business Ecosystem Assessment. Again, this is a report that you'll find on the Community Navigator website, and we'll give you access to that as well at the end of the webinar. As part of the funding we received, we were able to do an ecosystem assessment. So just a little bit about that. If you're not familiar with the term ecosystem, this is a term we're increasingly using in our work. And it's really an ecosystem is looking at all of the moving parts in a system to ensure that they're accessible and to look at the health of them so the ecosystem works. And in the last 10 years, this has been a growing body of work around the country that states will do an ecosystem assessment so they understand what small business resources there are and how businesses and potential businesses are accessing those resources. We were able to bring in UI Global, which specializes in ecosystem development, particularly in the Northeast, who did a study over the last 12 months for us. And that study had some robust community engagement effort. They were able to interview 65 stakeholders across the state. And those interviews included small businesses themselves, some that had been participating in the ecosystem and some that had not, community organizations that are serving diverse populations, and many of the resource providers. Also in the report, you will find best practices, programs, and models from around the country, and even some international models that are there for all of us to take a look at and learn from, and possibly consider what might be applicable in our state in terms of the ecosystem. I am going to share the findings of that study with you. And I have two here on this slide, which are two overarching findings, and then I'll get into a little more detail. But overall, there is a general lack of knowledge about the small business ecosystem and its providers. And so through all the research, the quantitative and qualitative data that UI Global worked with, That is their key finding, that we have work to do on ensuring that the ecosystem is known and accessible, particularly to diverse communities. The other finding that I'll share quickly is that many of the businesses we talked about, thank you, Melissa, many of the businesses that were interviewed for this study and the community resource organizations working with diverse populations said that they would first go to their city or town or their municipality to look for support. This was an interesting finding to us because we're not sure how much focus there has been on the municipal piece of the small business ecosystem, but clearly that's where those who are in need of resources are going, and something that we may want to address in the future. On this slide, we're sharing the small business ecosystem challenges. There's quite a bit of here for you to take a look at, and I'll highlight a couple of these in the next few slides. But and I think some of these might be new to you, and some of these are things that many of us who work in the small business ecosystem are aware of. The report underlines that resources are uneven across the state. And so we may have one region that's particularly strong in one area of support for small businesses, and another part of the state is stronger in a different part of the ecosystem. And so the resources are uneven. I will tell you where we feel optimistic about that is through the Community of Practice and the Community Navigator Program, and working together with the spokes over the past 2 years. The spokes are reporting to us that they are doing far more connecting and networking among themselves and making referrals to one another than they had done in the past. And so we think just the Community Navigator Program has been able to start to address this unevenness of the resources, or at least strengthen the network to share the resources with those who are looking for those. Another piece that's important here is that with the populations that we're looking to serve in the Community Navigator Program, it's really been important to understand that basic life needs are also important. So many of the clients that we work with are not only starting a business, but they may be challenged in terms of looking for housing, transportation, childcare, all the topics we talk about in New Hampshire. And oftentimes those things are all related and connected together. And it's important to understand those as we serve the small businesses. Service provider capacity is limited, and I'll get into that. That's okay. Go ahead, Melissa. I'll get into that in just a second. So some of the other key findings in the small business ecosystem analysis is our understanding of the difference between opportunity entrepreneurs and necessity entrepreneurs. So this was a really interesting finding for us, and I'll describe each of those for you. So opportunity entrepreneurs are often entrepreneurs who see an opportunity in the marketplace, and an opportunity where they can do a new activity or provide a new good or service. And that opportunity can be scaled up. And because of that, they have access to capital in a much easier way. Necessity entrepreneurs, as we said earlier, are entrepreneurs that are starting a business out of necessity. So possibly the entrepreneur is starting a business because they don't have childcare, or they don't have flexible hours at a current job. And so they decide to start a business so that they can also take care of their children or their aging parents. Sometimes necessity entrepreneurs are starting a business because they have a language barrier, or because the credentials they bring from another country are not applicable here, or there's a time lag. And so those entrepreneurs are really starting a business to take care of themselves and their family, tend to be definitely less than 5 employees, but often 1 employee and potentially a spouse or a partner works for them. And their goal is to have a business as a job that supports their family. necessity entrepreneurs in general are less likely to be able and sometimes interested in scaling up their businesses, so they have less access to capital. I think just in learning the difference between these two and really focusing on them, it has really become clear that the entrepreneurs, the small businesses that we've been supporting in the Community Navigator Program and the microenterprise program definitely fall into this necessity entrepreneur category. And going forward, we're really interested in learning more about the needs of necessity entrepreneurs. So another finding that we think is key, I want to share with you today, is about the small business development stages. As you may know, there are typically 4 areas of these development stages: idea, launch, grow, and sustain. And what the ecosystem analysis really found was that in New Hampshire, we are very strong at the grow and sustain part of the development stages. So if you're already in business and you're looking to grow and you're looking to maintain or you sustain your business, it is clear where the resources are, how to access those resources, and our current ecosystem focuses on those 2 development stages. Where there is some weakness in the ecosystem are in the first 2 development stages, which are idea and launch. And what we found was that entrepreneurs, particularly with diverse backgrounds, have less access and knowledge to these resources under idea and launch stage of entrepreneurship. This study also does a really nice job sharing what the small business resource framework should look like or could look like going forward. And the pieces of that include a coaching model for small businesses, access to capital, programming, which can include training and workshops, education on specific topics, technical assistance, and particularly important is networks and connections to others. In the current ecosystem, we are often focused on the programming and workshop area, technical assistance and coaching, and the report is calling out that we may work further on strengthening networks and connections going forward. So there are many things we can do to strengthen the ecosystem, starting with looking at these development stages, being aware of the 4 development stages, and making some conscious decisions on what part of the ecosystem under those development stages we might want to work on. Absolutely increasing awareness and access overall about the small business ecosystem is critically important. It's important that we begin to explore this role of the municipalities. And so, as I said earlier, we did do some work with a couple of the spokes actually went to each municipality in their county and introduced themselves and the work they do. We could see that work expand across the state. And also, there are many municipalities who've done small business work over many, many years. And we can spend some time better understanding what their role is in the ecosystem. Our resource providers, of course, need to build capacity. The Community Navigator Program increased their capacity with the funding and training that they received. Some of the spokes are able to keep some of the staff on through other funding. They certainly will take the training and education they have and apply that going forward, as well as the various marketing materials and the really strong outreach and engagement that they've done. Along with the need for connections and networking is the need for relevant mentorship. Going back to the representation piece I talked about earlier, is that it'd be important that we consider in the various mentorship models that are available, that the diverse small businesses can see themselves in the mentors, and build the next generation of mentors going forward. Social media is very important, I think, as many of us know, in the small business ecosystem. And one of the findings is that we can better understand and utilize social media to give access to the ecosystem. I think we all know, and some of us worry about the predatory nature of some things that are happening on social media with regard to small businesses. And there are also some really positive stories of where small businesses are connecting with each other and connecting with resource providers through social media. Of course, an increased access to capital is important. And as I said earlier, recognizing the many basic life needs that our small businesses and entrepreneurs are experiencing are important going forward. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Katie, and so she can talk about our next steps. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Molly. CDFA feels uniquely positioned to lead New Hampshire's small business ecosystem towards economic equity. We know that that's a piece of really critical work to ensure we continue to grow as a state and really ensure that small businesses, all small businesses, have the resources they need and support to grow. So there's a couple of immediate things that we're planning to do, and then looking to really continue this conversation and work. We really see this as sustained work for CDFA, that the Navigator program allowed us this amazing opportunity to really have additional resources and support to learn about these needs, but that this learning will actually be embedded in all of our work and continued. So a couple of immediate pieces of that continuation include developing a support network. We see our role as aligning the resources that CDFA administers, particularly the resources that we administer through the Community Development Block Grant Program and the microenterprise support, to really ensure that we're aligning those resources to the needs, using data-driven strategies and working with our partners and small businesses to guide our focus and ensure the investment in target areas, which this program did, and populations that require economic partnership to thrive. We also want to continue to build and will invest in capacity building. We see annual investments in capacity building, both through our investment of nearly between $1.5 and $2 million in technical assistance to small businesses through our regional partners, and then nearly $1 million to capacity building of emerging organizations. And those are really critical investments to ensure that this ecosystem continues to grow and support small businesses. So we'll continue that work, and we actually hope to grow that as well. As I was able to talk about in the beginning, in terms of the model, this really built an incredible model of connecting regional organizations, us as a statewide hub, and then partners, community partners. We're already doing some of the continued funding to partners through our underfunding sources, but we see that as really critical, continuing the funding and the partnership. Some spokes, as Molly said, have been able to keep the staff from Navigator on. And again, CDFA has been able to identify through our other resources funding for those many of those community partners, including activities that really ensure that that diverse individuals understand, hopefully have that increased awareness and understanding and are connected to the ecosystem. So those include activities like multicultural festivals, many of which are coming up in the coming summer. And we want to share these findings because we know that you all are economic development leaders in our state, and that you're working to, just like us, continue to strengthen and build this ecosystem, ensure that it's meeting the needs of all businesses with a particular focus on underserved businesses. So we want to get out there and share these learnings, and we encourage you to as well. And as Molly mentioned, there's such deep information in the reports that were created. And so we'd really love for you to really use those reports, to share those reports, and we'd be happy to provide this presentation to other groups who you think would benefit from this information. I'm very proud of the work that we were able to do through the Navigator program. And as I said, we plan to continue it. So I want to thank you all for your deep partnership on this program, for your work, and for your sort of faith that this made sense and this was necessary in New Hampshire. When we applied to this federal program, we didn't know sort of how this would come together in New Hampshire, and didn't imagine that we would serve 600 businesses and have these incredible results. But I think this long-term partnership allowed us to really utilize these funds to have these incredible successes. So we just thank you for your commitment to this work and for jumping in and doing it to make these successes happen. So if you could please download the final report and the small business ecosystem assessment. There was a question in the chat in terms of how many small businesses were surveyed, and in addition to others who were surveyed, those in the ecosystem, community partners, 30 small businesses and microenterprises were surveyed for that small business ecosystem assessment. So real diverse set of businesses surveyed, and continuing to learn from those businesses about their needs, and as those needs change is really our commitment. So we look forward to doing that. Again, I want to thank you for being part of today's session, and we'd be happy to answer any remaining questions before we sign off for today's webinar. We'll take just a minute to let you put questions in the Q&A if you have them, and be happy to answer them.
Hey, Katie, I'm not seeing specific questions in the Q&A just yet. I know that there was a question about the increased focus on necessity entrepreneurs and their interplay with other programs like New Hampshire Works programs or Pathways to Works, and others that are focused on the unemployed. And I'm not sure if we have information on those intersections or if you have thoughts on that, or Molly.
Yeah, great. So our current microenterprise program does provide funding support to the Pathways to Work program. So really do appreciate you raising that, because it is a great intersection of those necessity entrepreneurs. So that's the type of partnership that we look to continue, and also to continue to learn from in terms of those needs. So absolutely.
Not seeing any additional questions at this time. So with that, I think we can leave folks with a lot of really great information to read, and be aware and available to answer questions should you have any follow-ups as you dig into those resources.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.